In the final desperate days of the Second World War, the German Luftwaffe is a ghost of its former self. Its pilots are either too young or too exhausted, its fuel supplies have evaporated, and its command structure is in tatters. Yet paradoxically, it has never been more technologically advanced. In hidden underground factories and secret research facilities, a new generation of aircraft, jets, rockets, and strange asymmetrical designs sits waiting, a testament to a desperate, brilliant, final surge of innovation. In May of 1945, this schizophrenic force finally collapses. One moment it is the most advanced air arm in the world, the next it is little more than a collection of abandoned scrap metal. With the unconditional surrender of Germany, the Luftwaffe effectively ceases to exist overnight. Across the ruins of Europe, from the northern fjords of Norway to the fields of Czechoslovakia, thousands of German aircraft are left sitting on captured airfields, silent and leaderless. This sudden, massive inheritance of technology marks the end of one war and the beginning of another. It ignites the largest and most frantic technological seizure race in aviation history, a mad scramble that will pit the victorious Allies against each other and shape the future of air power for the next half-century. As Allied ground forces fan out across Germany, they find a scene of organized chaos. The once feared Luftwaffe command structure has disintegrated. Airfields are left abandoned, sometimes with coffee still warm in the mess halls. The aircraft they find are in every imaginable condition. Some are perfectly intact, fully armed and fueled, their pilots having simply walked away in the final hours. Others are damaged from strafing runs or deliberately sabotaged by their own ground crews. Many more are unfinished, sitting in pieces on assembly lines in vast underground factories, while others are unique, experimental prototypes, the only one of their kind in the world. Key locations become treasure troves. At airfields like Flensburg and Lübeck in the north, Allied forces discover hundreds of operational aircraft that had gathered in the final pocket of German resistance. In Prague, entire production lines for fighter planes are captured intact. At the infamous research facilities of Rechlin and Peenemünde, the Allies find not just aircraft but the wind tunnels, research data, and brilliant minds that created them. And scattered throughout the forests of Bavaria, hidden under camouflage netting, are some of the most advanced and bizarre aircraft ever conceived. The sheer variety of the captured hardware is staggering. Alongside thousands of conventional piston-engine fighters like the Messerschmitt Bf-109 and the Focke-Wulf FW-190, and workhorse bombers like the Heinkel He-111, the Allies uncover a technological zoo. They find hundreds of Messerschmitt Me-262s, the world's first operational jet fighter. They capture the Arado R-234, the first jet bomber, a sleek, futuristic machine that looks like it has flown out of a science fiction novel. They discover the Heinkel He-162 Volksjäger, a primitive but effective jet fighter built of wood and non-essential materials. And in closely guarded hangars they find the true jewels, the unfinished prototypes of the Junkers Ju-287, a heavy bomber with revolutionary forward-swept wings, and other experimental designs that push the boundaries of known aerodynamics. Faced with this enormous technological windfall, the Allied powers pursue three distinct and sometimes conflicting objectives. The first is security. Their primary goal is to ensure that Germany can never again rearm and threaten the peace of Europe. This means the complete and total demilitarization of the German state, and the Luftwaffe is at the top of the list. The second objective is intelligence and technology. The British, Americans, and Soviets are all acutely aware that German jet engine technology, swept-wing aerodynamics, and guided missile research are years ahead of their own. Capturing this technology is not just a matter of scientific curiosity, it is a matter of immediate national security. The nation that can successfully reverse engineer and master these German innovations will hold a decisive advantage in the post-war world. This leads directly to the third and most contentious objective, political competition. Even as they are celebrating their shared victory, the fragile alliance between the Western powers and the Soviet Union is beginning to fray. The race to capture German aviation technology is not just a scientific endeavor, it is the first shadow battle of the Cold War. American, British, and Soviet intelligence teams begin a frantic, often ruthless competition to secure the best aircraft, the most brilliant scientists, and the most critical research documents before their supposed allies can get to them. The hunt for the legacy of the Luftwaffe is on, a race that will determine who rules the skies in the decades to come. As the ink dries on the German surrender, the race for technology begins. The Americans, with their vast resources and industrial might, launched the most ambitious of these efforts. On May 8, 1945, Operation Lusty is officially established. Its mission is simple: to plunder the technological secrets of the Luftwaffe. The public face of this operation is a group of elite test pilots and engineers known as Watson's Whizzers, led by Colonel Harold Watson. Their dangerous and unprecedented task is to find, repair, and fly the most advanced captured German jets themselves. The Whizzers move with incredible speed. At the massive Lechfeld Air Base in Bavaria, they discover a treasure trove of Me-262 jet fighters. Working with German ground crews, they manage to make several of the complex, temperamental aircraft airworthy. At Grove in Denmark, they find a collection of even more exotic machines, including the sleek Arado R-234 jet bomber and a handful of unique prototypes. Their hunt takes them across Austria and into Czechoslovakia, often arriving at airfields just days and sometimes hours ahead of the advancing Red Army. The prize jewels of their collection are carefully selected, disassembled, and prepared for a long journey. In a logistical feat of incredible scale, dozens of the most advanced German aircraft, including Me-262s, R-234s, and the bizarre Dornier Do 335 push-pull fighter, are loaded onto the deck of the British aircraft carrier HMS Reaper. The ship, its deck crowded with the strange alien shapes of Luftwaffe technology, sails for the United States. At research centers like Wright Field in Ohio and Freeman Field in Indiana, these aircraft become subjects of intense study. American engineers take apart the revolutionary Junkers Jumo 04 and BMW 003 turbojets, the engines that had powered the German jet fleet. They study the swept-wing aerodynamics of the Me-262, a design feature that will become a hallmark of the next generation of American fighters. Just as valuable as the aircraft are the captured documents and the German engineers themselves who are brought to the US under programs like Operation Paperclip to share their knowledge. The British, having endured the wrath of the Luftwaffe for 6 long years, are driven by a similar, though perhaps more cautious, ambition. Their own effort, code-named Operation Surgeon, has 2 primary goals: to prevent Germany from ever rebuilding its aviation industry and to secure its best experts for Britain's own research programs. British teams move into their occupation zone in northern Germany, securing key installations at Schleswig, Husum, and the vast German research facility at Rechlin. While the Americans focus on capturing hardware, the British prioritize capturing human intelligence. They identify and transfer hundreds of German scientists, engineers, and technicians to British research facilities. At the Royal Aircraft Establishment in Farnborough, a collection of captured German jets, including the Me-262, the He-162, and the Do 335, are put through a rigorous series of test flights. The data gathered from these flights and from the interrogations of German scientists has a profound impact on early British jet and aerodynamic research, influencing the designs of aircraft like the Hawker Hunter. The Soviet Union, having borne the brunt of the Luftwaffe's fury on the Eastern Front, approaches the task with a ruthless and comprehensive determination. Soviet trophy brigades sweep through their designated occupation zones in Saxony, Silesia, and Moravia, as well as the industrial heartlands of Czechoslovakia. They are not just interested in a few select prototypes. They want everything. They seize entire factories, confiscating the production lines for Bf-109 fighters and Junkers Ju-88 bombers. They capture the critical Junkers engine plants, the source of the Mi-216's turbojets. In an act of industrial plunder unmatched by the Western Allies, the Soviets dismantle these entire factories, the machine tools, the assembly jigs, the technical drawings, and even the workers, and transport them by the trainload back to the Soviet Union. This wholesale transfer of German industrial capacity and intellectual capital will have a foundational impact on the post-war Soviet aviation industry, with German engineering and design principles directly influencing the development of the first generation of MiG and Yak jet fighters. This frantic scramble for technology inevitably leads to friction. The lines of occupation are still fluid, and the spirit of Allied cooperation is thin. At some airfields, American and Soviet forces arrive only hours apart, leading to tense standoffs over prized aircraft. The competition for the rarest and most advanced prototypes is particularly fierce. The Dornier Do 335, the Junkers Ju-287 forward-swept wing bomber, the Arado R-234, and the advanced Focke-Wulf Ta-152 high-altitude fighter become objects of intense dispute. While the newly formed Allied Control Council in Berlin attempts to coordinate the demilitarization process, these on-the-ground conflicts revealed the deep-seated suspicion and rivalry that is already. While the intelligence teams of the Allied powers cherry-picked the best of German aviation technology, a far grimmer fate awaited the vast majority of the Luftwaffe's abandoned air fleet. Once the most valuable prototypes and operational examples had been secured, the Allied Control Council issued a stark directive. All remaining military aircraft in Germany were to be destroyed. This order was driven by the primary Allied objective of ensuring total German demilitarization, but also by more pragmatic concerns. Leaving thousands of advanced aircraft intact posed a security risk, and the economic necessity of rebuilding Europe meant there were no resources to spare for the preservation of enemy hardware. What followed was a systematic and brutal process of destruction on an industrial scale. Across hundreds of airfields, Allied engineering units, often using conscripted German labor, began the grim work. The methods were crude but effective. The delicate aluminum airframes of fighters and bombers were unceremoniously cut apart with saws and torches. Massive bulldozers and tanks were used to crush the fuselages and wings into tangled heaps of scrap metal. In many places, vast pits were dug, and hundreds of aircraft at a time were pushed in and set ablaze, their magnesium components burning with a fierce, white-hot intensity. Other aircraft were simply buried, while some, particularly those captured near coastal bases, were towed out to sea and sunk. The scale of this destruction is difficult to comprehend. It is estimated that over 10,000 German aircraft were destroyed in the 3 years following the war. Over 1 million tons of aviation-related equipment, from spare engines to machine tools, were seized and either shipped abroad or scrapped. Even some of the most advanced jets, including dozens of Mi-262s, were unceremoniously destroyed. Their complex engines and delicate systems required specialized maintenance and spare parts that no longer existed, making them little more than useless, exotic curiosities to the occupying forces. Yet a handful of aircraft escaped this fate, going on to have improbable second lives in the service of other nations. In Czechoslovakia, the Avia factory, which had produced Messerschmitt Bf-109s during the war, used its existing tools and parts to create a hybrid fighter known as the Avia S-199. It was a notoriously difficult and dangerous aircraft, marrying the Bf-109 airframe with a surplus Junkers bomber engine, but it would have a crucial historic role. In 1948, a batch of these fighters was exported to the fledgling state of Israel becoming the first fighter aircraft of the Israeli Air Force. In Spain, the production line for the Bf-109 continued long after the war, resulting in the HA-1112, a version powered by a Spanish or British engine which remained in service until the late 1950s. Nations like Norway, France and Switzerland briefly operated captured German aircraft like the Arado R-96, Trainer, the Junkers, Ju-52 transport, and the Bf-109 for their own use. Today, the legacy of these machines continues, with several ambitious projects successfully creating flying replicas of the Me-262, bringing the ghost of German jet power back to the skies. The technical legacy of the aircraft that was saved had a profound and immediate impact on the burgeoning Cold War. In the United States, the data gathered from the Me-262's swept wings directly influenced the design of the F-86 Sabre, the fighter that would go on to dominate the skies over Korea. In the Soviet Union, the captured German engineers and their Jumo and BMW turbojet designs provided the foundational knowledge for the engines that would power the MiG-9 and, most famously, the world-beating MiG-15. In the United Kingdom, studies of German aerodynamics had a clear influence on classic British jets like the Hawker Hunter. In a great historical irony, the technology forged in the dying days of one empire became the cornerstone of the two new superpowers that would dominate the next 40 years of military aviation. This frantic period of seizure and destruction has left a complex and debated legacy. From a historical perspective, the loss was catastrophic. Hundreds of historically unique aircraft, including the only examples of many experimental prototypes, were destroyed without proper documentation. In the rush to demilitarize and extract technology, the goal of cultural preservation was almost completely ignored. Poor record-keeping and a lack of museum space at the time meant that irreplaceable artifacts of aviation history were lost forever. Scholars today still debate whether the Allied priorities, while understandable in the context of 1945, led to an unnecessary and tragic act of historical vandalism. In the end, the story of the Luftwaffe's final days is one of incredible speed and finality. Within 3 short years, one of the largest and most technologically advanced air forces in history simply vanished from the face of the earth. It was systematically dismantled, its secrets plundered by the victors, and its remains scrapped to help rebuild a continent it had helped to destroy. The aircraft that survive today in museums around the world are the last precious fragments of a vast air empire, an empire that was deliberately erased to build a new world order on its ashes.